happens, and then I have to go, wait, do that again.
What?
Brian, you were just saying you're not wearing underwear. Why were you telling us that?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. We're talking to Uncut Angling for one, so anything goes. Then Chad comes in, and then you just never know what can happen.
Yikes.
I had that written down.
How many days a week are you guiding right now, Brian?
5 or 6. This week 7.
Is that standard for year round, or is this a busy or low time?
No, well, I mean, you always just get it's just so hard to say no sometimes, but I have to set those boundaries. Like I normally take Mondays and Fridays off, but the local bait shop guy wants to take his family out tomorrow afternoon, so I'll be out there all day tomorrow.
Nice. But what's the busiest time of year?
All year.
Oh,
It just like it's all like in the like spring and summer, I'm booked out like 2 or 3 months, and then we get into the winter period, and then I'm booked out like 3 or 4 weeks. You know what I mean? Because everyone in the wintertime is just like, what does he actually do in the winter? And that's when we catch crappies, big time. Like there's no game fish really to speak of when the water's 35 in Kansas. It's all just live scope crappies. So people see that and then they're like, oh my gosh.
When you get that little window in the middle of winter where you might freeze up on some of the lakes, do you don't guide on ice, do you? Or what do you do?
No, we have 2 power plant lakes. So one is a nuclear power plant and one is a coal power plant. But I like the nuclear one too, for the most part, because it's got smallmouth in it.
Yeah.
And wipers. So we just end up like if someone is not married to the idea of catching crappies and the lake freezes, we can just say, do you want to go to the power plant and catch wiper? I mean, literally like wipers, walleyes. My dad caught his personal best walleye in the middle of January in 2 feet of water on a swim bait there. Because those are all like pre-spawn fish. Like power plant fish don't go by the rules of like as far as water temperature or moon phase or what's the word that I'm looking for? Oh, photo period. So it's a crazy place. It can be really it's a power plant. It's either really good or really bad. There's not really any in between. Oh, hey Chad.
Chad, thanks for showing up. We've actually been recording for a few minutes already. It's nice that you actually decide to participate.
Yeah, thanks.
It's my email account. Apparently, it took like 5 minutes to upload my email. Then I went to the first link, and then I went to the second link. So, whoops.
If you want a little free tip on branding, you got to move the Kaprizov jersey just a little bit over so we can see who your boat sponsor is.
Oh, I cannot wait, man. Time for a real sport, right?
He has a wheelboat now, don't you, Chad? Didn't you just get a wheelboat?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. You know, I don't use it for... I use my little boat. This one sits in the shop and collects sawdust.
Yeah, but ask him if he likes it, though. That's the big question.
Yeah. It is very expensive to go fishing in, though. It's impossible to not open that thing wide open and, you know, it'll move, man. That big beast moves. It'll do 65 miles an hour, so.
I know. Well,
you can just hear the $20 bills flying out of it.
Hey, there you go.
I felt lame being the only one that was in vertical mode. I wanted everything, all my computer stuff is in the background. With
Way better.
Fish.
Way better. Hey, what's that big open spot behind you, Brian? What's that all about? Why don't you have some like a certificate or a tournament check or something framed there?
I'm waiting for 2 almost 6-pound smallmouth. Hopefully it should be arriving in the next week or 2, but that's going to occupy that spot on a big piece of driftwood.
Were they caught at the power plant lake you were just talking about?
No, one I caught in Sturgeon Bay, and the other one I actually caught here last November, like literally 5 minutes from my house.
But not at the power plant lake?
No, we've had several between 5 and 5.5 from the power plant lake, but that's the problem with being a full-time fishing guide is that all my clients catch the big ones. I don't really have time to catch the big ones for myself.
That doesn't sound like a problem.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not. But when you're asking where all my big fish are, they're in my client's hands, not in my hands. You know, you've done it. Just same with Clayton. He always, now he's not guiding. He's back to fishing full time.
Yep.
That's all I have
Break that silence, Chad.
I'm just trying to get my bearings here.
How many drinks have you had, Chad, already?
I really didn't have much to work with here tonight.
This isn't the Hoyer show.
Yeah, I got pretty. Well, he liked to tell stories, so that made it easier. I just kind of got to sit back and listen, you know. Aaron's got some stories.
I mean, you are running for local government, no?
I was
Yes.
just going to bring that up.
Yes, I am a politician now. Thanks for noticing.
Talk about a transition that nobody saw coming.
I'm here for it, big time.
Yeah.
Before you get going too far, Chad, maybe we should introduce these guys just in case somebody, you know.
I missed out. I didn't know if you'd introduced them.
No, we just started going. They were going, so I just hit the record button. So
Okay. Well, Brian Ondrejka, I hope I'm saying your last name right. Is that
You
right?
are. Good work. Yeah, strong
Right.
work.
Kansas angling experience. He's got a big YouTube channel, but he's a big Garmin teacher. And of all the guys I've seen videos on Garmin, he can explain it, you know. So and he's went from a beginner to being, you know, where he's at right now. I mean, how many years have you been using it now? Like 3-4 years?
Yeah, probably 4 years. Just like it was a big transition, and I was really stubborn to begin with, to just going from like I can still do this on traditional sonar to transitioning. Plus, at the time too, it was a big investment. I wasn't on pro staff at the time, so that was an investment. But
Right.
Yep, here we are, and the internet will never let me forget where I came from. You always said you were against it.
True, though, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but there's proof right there how good it is. I mean, you could obviously, you did good without it too, but it just adds a different element for a lot of times for the people that are probably just getting into fishing too, that can see a live image of it. You know, I mean, that's got to be kind of exciting to somebody that's never fished.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like today we're in the big time fall transition in this area. So the first week and a half of the fall transition, when we get those really cool overnight temps, the fish can be real tough. Very negative, very neutral, and we can see them on live scope. I mean, when they're like this, I just rely more on side imaging more than anything. And there are a lot of times where I don't really use live scope that much. Like if the fish are going, I can set up upwind to those fish and spot lock and cast right back to them and never even put live scope in the water.
Right.
But for those people, even when the fish aren't biting, it's still a trip for them.
Do you think you sell a lot of Garmin units by guys that are going out with you?
I do, yeah. I think after 7 years now of guiding and living 28 minutes or so from Garmin headquarters here in the northeast part of the state, they put me on pro staff 2 years ago. So that's all part of it. We're just sales guys.
Right. Well, it's legitimate. You know, this guy above you, everybody knows. I'm assuming that most people recognize this scruffy thing up above. Aaron Wiebe, Uncut Angling.
Amazing.
Aaron.
It's just like you said, Chad. It's like capturing Sasquatch.
It's like
Pretty
where
much.
Aaron been? So we need some updates on your life. What the heck have you been up to? And I know you've had a little project going in the spring. I'm hoping you're willing to talk about that. You know what?
No, we don't want to talk about that.
You
But
don't?
no, I don't think we want to talk about that.
Oh,
Definitely don't want to talk about that. But in terms of the politics thing you were talking about, yes, it is much different, and it's showing up everywhere, including lining up this meeting, as I've been begging Chad and then Chad Talani to line this up and a test and everything. And then I was the first to the meeting, was I not?
Pretty much.
So this is a different, like everything's different now. It's game over season.
It's been a you got a first place, so it's good. We'll give it to you.
Yeah, I don't know what else, like what your other questions were there, but
No, there's no other questions, but we wanted to know about what you're dealing with that sewage. What's going on with that whole story? I mean, a lot of people probably don't know about it, but how did you come to find that whole situation. And I mean, where does this stand? It sounded like somebody was, basically doing something that hadn't been approved is, the gist of what I got of it.
Yeah, I think live scope is going to be a much more exciting topic and winter in smallmouth. But the gist of it is that there was a lagoon being put in close to my house, and there was just some questions that me and some of my neighbors had, and we kind of pursued it, and it turned into a little bit of a bigger thing. But it definitely, in this setting, is not as exciting as live scope. So I don't know how much more we want to talk about that, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but how much campaigning have you been doing? I mean, come on.
Well, now I'm running for local councillor, and that's kind of taking up my time at the moment. But just to like finish off the lagoon thing, like lagoons are a reality. There's lagoons everywhere, so it's a everybody poops, and it's a pretty boring topic, but there's a lot of environmental concerns that go along with it, and that was just kind of what caught my interest for a little bit there. But then I got sucked into it because my whole community cared, so I was like involved with my community and caring, and then there was the opportunity to just be involved more in terms of community issues in general, and that's where I kind of got into running for councillor, and that's where I am now, is pursuing that. But obviously fishing is still a primary focus in my life also. And the opportunity to run for council, I'm hoping, is going to give me the chance to be having some insights in other environmental issues and maybe researching new lakes around here to stock and just concerns with fishing in general. The community I live in, it's on the Winnipeg River between Lake of the Woods and Lake Winnipeg. You guys have heard of those big lakes, right?
Right.
You've got Lake of the Woods. Bonnie, have you heard of Lake of the Woods?
Oh man, I don't know. I might have to look that one up.
Okay, so you've got Lake of the Woods, epic water body. The main outflow is the Winnipeg River, and it right away goes into Manitoba and then goes into Lake Winnipeg. Again, another lake I'm sure you have not heard of, Lonnie.
Wait. What was that? What was that word you said?
Lake Winnipeg.
Oh, perfect. I actually was talking about again, but not Winnipeg.
Again.
So, yeah.
Again.
Okay, this is all backwards, but right here, that's the widest spot on the Winnipeg River between Lake Winnipeg and Lake of the Woods. It's
Lake
called
of the
Lac
Woods.
Bonnie.
Gotcha.
And this is where I live, this area here. How backwards is this? Okay, so this lake is where I live now. And what were we getting at? Not really sure.
The lagoon dumps into the river.
No, we were getting away from lagoon. Oh, okay. I was just getting into how the community that I live in is kind of like a cottage / retirement community for the most part. So as much as it seems like Aaron Wiebe's not cut out for politics and would have nothing to do with politics, the main concerns of the people here are the lake and the river that everybody lives in such close proximity to. So all the issues that you hear people concerned with are lake and river issues and docks and, zoning considerations in association with the water and stuff. So a month ago, I would have said, yeah, I have no.
Oh no. Where did you go?
He's frozen.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping for the button that said Wiebe for councilman, or maybe a hat or something. But
What's that?
Oh, there you go.
You cut out on us.
I was just saying that, the more I got into it, the more I realized that such a primary concern of this area is the lake and the river here, which is my main concern anyways. So it ended up being a perfect fit, and it's fun. It's good.
Well, if you can somehow
Wiebe for councilman. Where's that at?
It'll be on signs plastered all over the neighborhood within 48 hours.
No hat, no shirt. Garmin.
I like that. I almost had time to change out of my sim shirt to put the Garmin shirt on, but
If you had extra time, you should have put underwear on.
that wasn't high on the priority list. So how involved are the Tullys in your campaign?
I mean, everybody has lives, and the Tullys are very close friends of mine that would drop everything to help me, but I'm not trying to draw them out of their everyday work and stuff to be doing that. So they're not that involved. There's 4 Tully brothers. The oldest, who I went to school with since I was in like grade maybe 7, his name's Peter. He is the fishing buyer for Cabela's Canada. So he, you know, has a very big full-time fishing job. The second oldest is Mark Tully, and he works full-time for Frostbite Ice Fishing Company. So he's managing that and does all the actual work for Frostbite. And then the third oldest is Michael Tully, who doesn't work in fishing, and he's the black sheep of the family. And he's, as much as he's a black sheep, he's an engineer. So it's a, and then the youngest is Adam, who's the coolest by far, who can actually like talk to girls and, you know, be cool. And probably if he doesn't surf, he has the embodiment of a surfer. And he's a bit younger, so he doesn't have a full-on career yet. But that's the makeup of the Tullys.
I like it.
And they definitely get worse and worse with fishing, in the sense of like Peter and Mark are both really good, but then the drop off is just severe. Like it just really drops off after that.
Peter improved from the 2000, what year was that? 2008 Lake of the Woods, lake trout, walleye outing.
Has who improved?
Do you remember
Mark?
that? Peter,
Yeah.
Pete, you
No,
slept
that was
you
Mark.
the whole way here. No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Mark. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
God.
that was Mark.
That was Mark. Is Mark the youngest one?
No, second oldest. So Chad and Mark and I went on a lake trout fishing trip on Lake of the Woods. And what Chad really remembers is I convinced him to take his brand new truck on an exploratory mission onto a crappie lake. I don't know if I said I'd fished on it or not, but I had not fished on it. And once we got out there, we measured the ice, and it was, I don't know what it was. There wasn't.
So sketchy.
Hey, it wasn't my truck, so why should I be that concerned?
It was
That's right. Just like Uncut angling. Your grandfather, that's a 1-star fisherman and a 5-star grandfather that worked for the truck dealership.
Yep.
Maybe,
Yep.
potentially.
Something like that. Yep.
I haven't watched 39 hours 74 times.
But anyways, like, guys, the viewers, they say they're Uncut angling fans, but they actually want to hear us talk about fishing. So we should probably
That's right.
actually charge into some live scope serious topics here. I know that Chad has a big agenda plan for tonight with specific breakdowns of topics that we need to address, right, Chad?
Yeah. He's asking me for a game. What's the agenda and the plan? I just back to his old. There's no plan.
Have you guys talked in depth about live scope on this podcast recently or ever?
Well, we've had some. You're so out of tune with walleye, guys. Have you even heard of a guy named Tom Wynn?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he was your last podcast, no?
Right. Well, we've been talking to him because he's been tearing it up in walleye events. So, like in the last 3 years, I'm assuming he fishes maybe like 5 or 6 a year. I think he's got 9 wins. Pretty damn impressive. And these are 50+ boat tournaments. And he's had some big. I think he had a second place in the NWT and some other high ones. So he's really, and he's all live scope. Like he went to Lake of the Woods and he started, everybody cranks Lake of the Woods. Well, he was casting a huge swim bait at some very small walleyes, and he would see big walleyes mixed in with the small walleyes. And then he went, after he found the big walleyes, he'd throw a more subtle bait in and catch them. And he won a 3-day tournament on Lake of the Woods last year, casting swim baits, smaller swim baits to big walleye when everybody else is pulling crankbaits. So he's definitely dialed in for walleye. So we talked to him, but we haven't really got in depth in using it. That's why I wanted to talk to you and Brian, because you kind of started the whole thing with Panoptics. I mean, it's been out forever now, but I don't know, what year did Panoptics come out? Like 10 years ago now? It's got to be getting 8 years ago.
Yeah, the PS22. Aaron, you had it, no?
Yeah,
first one that's like
video
sonar
card on the pond where you drilled the holes through.
Yeah, PS22. I definitely would not say I started anything, but maybe I was responsible for some of the widening of the exposure, but I was not on the forefront of anything, that's for sure. Because I know that when I sort of finally started using it, it had been talked about for already several years. And I think I was on the exact same curve as Brian, being sort of like skeptical and confused about stuff I was seeing and not like ready to jump right in on it because there's like a big expense to it. And I guess just skepticism overall in terms of like, is this really going to help me catch more fish? And I've seen over the years how the general public is the same way, and I've been critical of them, but now Brian's helped remind me that that's how he was and also how I was. So it's like, okay, like here I am being judgmental of everybody else being so slow to the party, but I was slow to the party too, because I knew about I knew about Panoptics so long ago, and it took me several years to embrace it and learn just how awesome it was. But like Brian and you, Chad, and I don't know, Lonnie, are you using LiveScope?
No, not live scope. I have
Oh,
Lowrance.
Hi, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. It's a cat toy.
Is that the cat toy? It is. We have it.
Don't give me, I don't need that. You want a drink? Okay, bye. So where were we at? Oh, Lonnie, did you say you are using LiveScope?
I have a forward facing, but it's not Garmin.
Okay, but I mean, same thing.
I'm the black sheep, so
it's not. This isn't a brand. This isn't a brand conversation. It's okay. So you have forward facing sonar, and then you're using it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the only thing I was going to say is the same way it came in with side imaging. When you've got a fish head, like the four of us, you can be as skeptical as you want, but the moment you see it in action, it's just instantly like, okay, I get it now. Like it doesn't take any convincing. Where the only reason it takes a little bit of time is because of the overhead price to get involved. But the moment you see it, like I remember I was so skeptical about side imaging, and the moment I saw it, I was like, okay, the price doesn't matter. And same with forward-facing sonar, if that's what we're calling it. The moment that you actually see it in action, it's just like, all my questions are gone. I absolutely have to have that more than anything else in my entire life. You know, it's just like,
yeah, and that was the thing, was that this spring I went out with Chad, and he was running the Garmin, and just watching what was going on there. I hadn't really been in a boat where it's actually been, oh man, we lost him. I hadn't been in a boat where I could actually see it. So once I saw Chad's, it was like, okay, I got to figure out somehow, some way to get one of these, whether it be Garmin, Lowrance, or whatever. So
we were out fishing deep, weren't we? At that, when you came out here, we were fishing deep, and that's one of its. When you're fishing deep water, like deeper than 31 feet, it's bad. It doesn't pick up the bottom very good. That's the one negative. You really got to get them fish to come up high.
It is very tough. Yeah, and that's something that I deal with too. And I mean, it starts right about that like 28 to 30 foot. Thankfully, here in the mid-south, in the northeast part of Kansas, we don't have a crazy deep fishery for the most part. There's a couple lakes to the west, close to the Colorado border, that get to that 70, maybe 80 feet, but a lot of those are the striper, actual true striper saltwater fisheries where you're never going to see those fish on the bottom. They're all suspended right about, especially, May through August, September, where the thermocline is right about halfway down. But here, no, I mean, the biggest thing with forward facing or down facing live sonar technology, whatever, has been just to see how the fish act. Just to see, like, we have such a diverse fishery as far as like my guide service, a multi-species situation, to where it's the wipers, the white bass, the walleyes, the saugers, the crappies, the smallmouth, largemouth on occasion, to when you're vertical jigging those fish, which we're gearing up for here in November, where those walleyes and those wipers suspend in the river channels and just cruise that area like a highway, to where when you get a bait like a jig wrap or a tikka minnow in front of them, just to see, I can tell somebody within 3 seconds if that fish is a walleye or a wiper, just based on how the walleyes act. And I love seeing everyone's, like Tom Boley. We got the cat here on the tripod. Tom Boley,
let's see the cat.
Clayton,
Let's see the cat. Grab the cat.
Oh my gosh, she's gonna be so mad. Come here. That's one.
Aw.
Yeah, she's mad. We have two.
Didn't look
She's
very
the
happy.
most inquisitive. But anyway, that's all. That's been the funnest part. The most fun part about live scope is just being able to see how those fish react and being able to tell you right off the bat whether literally it's a crappie, a white bass, a wiper, or a walleye.
Are
So
you
what
ever
is it that-
wrong?
What's that?
I was gonna. Sorry, Lonnie, to cut you off, but how often are you wrong? Because you're saying you can tell if it's a walleye or a wiper, and how often are you surprised that it wasn't what you thought? Like, are you at 90% or 80%, or what are you at?
No, I mean, honestly, I'd say like 60-40 because number one, on these reservoirs, it depends on the area. It depends on the time of year, whether it's spring, summer, fall. Because a lot of times if we see fish in those river channels in the summertime when the water's real warm, they're all wipers. They're in the channel cruising, but when the walleyes are in the river channels deep and suspended, they're in full feedback mode.
I don't think you understood my question. I said, what percentage of the time are you right when you are trying to decipher if it's a walleye or a wiper? What percentage of the time are you right?
Yeah, 90%, definitely.
90? Cool.
Yep.
Sorry, Lonnie, what
Yep.
were you going to say?
Well, that's what I was going to ask, was not the percentage, but what is it that's indicating to you what the difference is? It's just the way the fish is reacting, or is it size, profile?
Obviously, like, it helps when there's wind and we've gotten some rain because then it generates a lot of current and it sets those fish up into that deep water in the river channel to where they can just cruise. But walleyes will typically, like, so I don't really use the down aspect of live scope as much as I use forward facing. And that's just because I like to be able to anticipate what's coming from in front of the boat, especially when I have clients that are literally standing on the bow, looking at the graph, looking forward. If I can tell them there's fish coming in from the front or the back, depending on your settings, like the reverse range setting on live scope. But it's really just, it all depends on time of year. Spring and fall, I can guarantee those walleyes and those wipers are in the channel just feeding. We caught them all the way up till Christmas last year because we had such a mild fall that those fish, the water temps were still in the mid 40s. It was like 44 almost on Christmas Day that we were catching walleyes in the river channel, vertically on jig wraps, suspended 25 feet down over almost 40 feet of water, which was probably the most fun. I have a great video on my YouTube channel, and I did not bring my second GoPro to record the screen because I didn't have a GPS map unit at the time to record the screen from the unit to my phone. But it's really a lot of fun. But it's truly the coolest thing to see how those fish interact with the bait. Like walleye have a tendency to just flip back and forth like that when you're just pulling it away, literally like a lake trout. Like fishing deep lake trout, it's almost like you can't pull it away from them fast enough. And then just trying to match the speed. So it has been a really fun experience, not just from client's perspective, thinking it's really cool technology, but just learning so much about how those fish act and react to a bait just in the wild, and then learning how to adjust from there.
In the wild? As
in
if
the wild.
How they'd react in an aquarium, but this is out in
That's
the
right.
wild.
Hey, it's not the Bass. I mean, Bass Pro Shops might be pretty trained. They love throwing just barbless Ned rigs in the Bass Pro Shops.
Did it change? Did you used to not fish vertical? I mean, did it change your approach to fishing?
It was just so hard because it would be very difficult now for me to go back to traditional sonar, trying to fish those fish suspended in the river channel, because like when you have a jig wrap, you know, it's like you want a big pull up and then let it fall on a controlled fall, and you're going to see those fish engage just like you would a lake trout or something. But now I see so many guys on the local lake that I guide on closest to my house that have seen my videos, and they will just go out with a jig wrap and you just see them all day just ripping that thing, when in reality now those fish are so pressured that all it takes is just a slow, keep your rod tip down and just pull that jigging wrap literally vertically like this away from the bait, and then you just boop. It's amazing. It's really fun. It's not your typical jig wrap bite or any sort. It doesn't matter if it's like, just a 3/8 or half-ounce jig head with a 3-inch straight tail plastic, kind of like a Kalen's Jerk Minnow Jr. with a little bit of the head bit off. It's just really fun. It has been really fun for sure.
That's the thing I'll say about the live scope and jig wraps. Like the Columbia River, it flows pretty fast, and I didn't fish jig wraps much the first few years I was out here, but once I got the live scope, and I've caught some of my bigger ones, especially daytime jig wrap vertical. But seeing how that fish reacts, like you say, sometimes, and I've caught my best fish when that jig wrap is not moving at all. It's just going down river at 1.5 miles an hour. But if I just give it the smallest jig, that fish leaves. Or if I give it a little jig, the fish leaves.
Yep.
But if you do not move it, all of a sudden they'll hit. And I don't know if that's just a negative fish or what it is.
No, I don't know. There is really something to be said about the dead stick bite, especially when it comes to a horizontal presentation,
Right.
like a jig wrap, where I can literally dead stick that bait and they will still eat it.
And it's usually the hardest, not always. Sometimes it'll just be a tap, but sometimes
Literally.
it's just obliterated.
Right.
More times
And
than
it's
not.
like, I think it might just be area specific, or maybe current fish are different than basin fish with no current. Not no current, but just not like a river channel type situation, because I'm sure every basin, depending on the wind, will have some sort of current generating. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. It has been super fun though. Just the learning, just because I always tell people, it's not, live scope is not a toy. It will never put fish in the boat for you, because now everyone obviously thinks live sonar technology is cheating. But just to learn so much about each species of fish and how they react, like crappies in the winter is so fun. They're so dumb when the water's cold. You just put 2 jigs down there and just literally pull it away from the fish, and then boop.
I can't even imagine it ice fishing, because I left the Midwest before that was out. And man, I can't even imagine having that stuff up on, or so many different, especially Lake of the Woods, or not Lake of the Woods, but Lake Winnipeg, where I spent a ton of time up there, 2007, 8, 9, 10, like almost every weekend I was going up there, because I was only about 4 hours away, and I had a couple of buddies that wanted to fish. Man, we had, those were fun times, man. And we broke a lot of shit. Got a few tickets here and there. It was fun though. It was worth it.
Yep, for sure.
Tickets, yeah.
Open liquor tickets?
No. It was actually a 500.
Over the limit.
So I'm driving. I had an 87. I had the 87 Toyota. I drove all the way up there so I could just drive it up on the ice and not bring any equipment. Just beat the hell out of it when I got stuck. Just winch it out. And this truck was worth like $500, and I got a no seatbelt ticket on a gravel road into Maine for not having a seatbelt ticket. And it was $500. Take that, America.
Wow.
Hey, we
That's
really
wild.
appreciate all the tourism dollars you're bringing up here, but that seatbelt needs to be buckled up.
Well, the question is,
Especially on this gravel road right here, right now.
Going ice fishing. Right. I got to keep that. Yep. Yeah, that was an expensive one, but man, that was fun. There was a lot of dangerous situations going up there, getting stuck. Man, we got stuck all the time. And this is before I got to experience Lake Winnipeg, before everybody else really did. Man, it was cool out there the first year. There was nobody out there. And the second year, there was a couple. You never even went out there. He never goes to Lake Winnipeg.
I'm not one of the probably 10 or 15,000 people that were the first ones on Lake Winnipeg. I am not one of them.
No, he fished the river. He's smart. He fished the river. He was a river rat. So, we're going way back into the bounty fishing days.
And so Chad, talking about ice fishing with live scope, it's amazing, but it's all about what Brian's saying about teaching you about the behavior. You lose a lot of the benefit of being able to like adapt to chasing the behavior though. Like you can change your presentation and adapt your lure and stuff, but in open water, you can pursue the fish and stuff. And there's times where you can pursue the fish on the ice and drill more holes and stuff, but it isn't. I would say it's a game changer on ice, but it's like double the game changer open water, or triple, or whatever, you know.
Right.
I guess that's just how everything in open water is better than ice fishing. So
That's what it is. Move it. Like when we were set up back in the day, we had our sleds ready, so you could, man, you'd flip that, you'd pop one hole and you'd drill a hole. Or back then it was all gas augers, but
Yep.
your flip over shack ready to go, and you drill a hole and flip it over. If no fish there, you move 100 yards or whatever on Lake Winnipeg. And having all that bulky stuff, setting it up would have been a pain in the ass. I hear you there. You can't be as mobile as you normally would be with that setup.
I mean, you can still be pretty mobile. It just doesn't translate quite the same with being able to drive your boat or like press the gas on your bow mount or whatever. Hey, enough about ice fishing, because we'll have lots of time to talk about ice fishing in a few months from now. Brian, is there legalities being changed with live scope or forward-facing sonar in Kansas right now, or surrounding states?
No, not in Kansas or Missouri or Iowa and Nebraska. I mean, the biggest stink that was caused recently would be the PMTT with the Muskie Trail, which is wild to think about. I spent a lot of time, and I honestly try not to read through so many comments, but it's good to get a lot of guys' different perspectives on why this was a good decision or why this was a bad decision, because you get a lot of guys that say the only reason now in the PMTT on a Muskie Trail is being banned is because two guys won it that had live scope, and they smoked a lot of the locals. Again, not going to get into the details and stuff, but now they're set, mid-season, they're making this rule change, which for a tournament circuit, is not really a good move to make, unless it has something to do with boater safety. Is
Right.
a really tough call to make. So that was my only thing with it. And that's coming from having fished tournaments in the past before I started guiding full time. But no, as far as our area is concerned, nothing's been changed. And honestly, it's like, if you don't have forward-facing sonar, it's pretty tough to compete, especially from a crappie perspective, because the crappie trails in the Mid-South here are very popular. Where I'm from, Wisconsin, I moved down here in 2000, and there's just not a crappie circuit in the north. So to see the big crappie circuits down here are wild. But recently, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, there were two guys that won a professional crappie circuit tournament with no live scope and some sort of cane pull situation. So that created a big talk in the social media world too. But
What?
it is crazy to see.
About the benefits of the cane pull, or about what?
No, I mean, it was just like on a professional crappie trail where 98% of the field is probably using live sonar technology, that these guys used no live scope technology and literally some sort of cane pull.
I think it was a couple locals that went out that knew the body. They've probably been fishing their whole lives, and they just everybody's ass. I heard you're talking about that Josh Jones.
Who? I've never heard of her. I'm sorry.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah. That guy's won a bunch of those crappie tournaments down south.
Yeah.
And I think he's just got a guy netting his fish, driving around.
Something.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a reminder to all Chad's friends. You don't want to fish a tournament with him, because you just heard how he feels about his tournament partners.
What? Just netting the fish?
Yeah.
Or it's like when you guys, isn't it like when you guys fished the Columbia River together and you guys were just pulling crankbaits the whole time and Chad caught the big fish and Aaron didn't catch one? Or maybe Aaron did catch one. I don't remember.
He came out here, he caught one right away. That was
okay.
Yeah, we had that was horrible. He drove, I don't know how he did it. He drove like 1,500 miles straight through, and then proceeded to blow up his brand new trolling motor on our pre-fishing day. He didn't do anything wrong. It just went bad. So we were up all night remounting an Altera to his boat. So he hadn't slept for like 48 hours.
Well, that's your first problem,
finished
is that
the tournament.
you went with an Altera.
Yeah.
It
Well,
wasn't an Altera, or did we install an Altera? I would never buy an.
I was literally going to say I've never seen Aaron Wiebe with anything besides a Taroba.
We had to boat. Remember, we were up all night remounting it, and yeah, you probably don't remember because you were just out of it because you hadn't slept for 2 days at that point.
No. Brian and I just got hung up on the word Altera because the Altera is a great product for the people that it's designed for. It's not designed
guys that fish once
like
a month,
us.
maybe.
I got an Ultrex on there now. Hey,
Ultrex is great. Ultrex is great, but
can we finally tell that story about that bass that we followed around in that big bass tournament? It's been a long time.
Okay.
So like I said, 2 days. He was dead tired. I was dead tired too. He was worse. And this is an hourly big bass tournament on Moses Lake. And we actually found a really cool bite way down in the rocks, like North Ford. I think they call it the Ford Rocks or whatever, on the north side of Moses. And we caught some walleyes and some nice bass. They were smallmouth. But mid-lake, we saw this huge largemouth bass.
Like, the one. We saw the one.
Like
the one.
The one.
The hour. And I mean, it was just beautiful out there. It was just a little ripple on the water, but it was nice and sunny. And
was this with live scope or were you sight fishing it?
No, I don't think you had it back then.
It was like this much water. Yeah, I don't know if we had live scope or not, but Brian, it's the kind of fish, and Lonnie, sorry, Lonnie, I keep forgetting you're there.
No,
you're
it's
not
okay.
talking enough.
Yeah.
It's the kind of fish where you've got all your rods there and you're shaking and you can't think straight. You have no idea which rod to use, even though you have all the answers. But in that moment now, the fish is right there and you have no idea what to do. So you're just like picking up your rods. Like I remember grabbing a rod and then immediately like putting it down and being like, which rod should I use? And like, we're both just like tickled and dizzy. And
but you're sure it wasn't a sheep's head though?
Oh, we were sure it was a largemouth bass is what we were sure of. And it was so big that it was kind of sickly big. You know, when sometimes a really big one looks like it might
just like looks gross, like big bulgy eyes and just gross looking. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of like start getting our wits about us and start getting some lures in front of us, in front of it, and to have time to change baits. And we're chasing around this flat. I don't know how many minutes it's been. Has it been 15 minutes at this point, Chad?
Oh God, I think it was about half an hour.
but the more that we interact with this fish, the more sure we are how freakish it is and how we just can't believe how big this fish is.
Yeah. And he's throwing everything. He's throwing hair jigs, flies, and putting it right in front of that damn thing's mouth.
And I think that I'm very good at sight fishing. So the whole time I'm so confident that eventually we're going to figure this fish out. So it's like, it's just a matter of time that we're going to figure out the lure, the presentation. So often when you're sight fishing, it's a very specific angle and timing, as in it's not just like the fish is sitting there and you cast at the one specific angle. He's got to be in the right timing also. And sometimes it can be when that fish gets spooked a little. So now the fish has a little bit of motion and then you get the lure in front of it at the right angle. So now you've got two things working and the fish just all of a sudden switches into like auto drive.
Oh no.
That Manitoba Wi-Fi.
He's got Starlink. Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, just pause for a second. Just right when you made this motion, it went right off and then it paused.
Basically, what I'm getting at is we knew we were going to catch it eventually, and we were just working on this fish. And careful all the time. You don't want to snag the fish because that's not cool. So you have to be presenting your lures at a bit of a buffer. You know, you want your lure to go by him a foot away. You don't want it to go by an inch away. So we keep trying different things. And this is Chad's favorite part of the story. It was a carp.
Oh, I could have called that from a mile. That's why I asked right away. Are you sure it wasn't a sheep's head?
Hold on, though.
I know
think it applies.
I know you did.
A little bit. It was not a normal carp. it was one of them mirror carps, and it had a lateral line on it.
That's cool though. I
Somewhere
love
there's a
mirror carp.
picture, I would assume. But
Yeah.
it had a lateral line because it was a mirror carp. So while it's somewhat justifiable, he's a bass fisherman. I'm not. So it's definitely not justifiable for him. But for me, it's kind of justifiable. But
Not only am I a bass fisherman, I'm a carp fisherman. So it's just bad in general. I'm, you know.
I
There
love
you
that
go.
though. That's great. But like, oh man, that is so cool. A mirror carp is so cool. You
Well,
know
this-
how many smallmouth I've sight fished because
But-
I thought it was a smallmouth, but it was a sheephead.
So there's more to it. Like anybody that's chased the carp around knows carp don't move slow, right? They dart out of there. So the reason this carp was doing that is it had a bow. Somebody hit it with an arrow, and it had.
Oh
it had
my god!
Once we got right over the thing, we saw it. So the fish was just not being normal carp like, right? I mean, this thing was just lethargically moving. I think it even went through a culvert, and we watched it go through a culvert.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah, but the explanation for that was the fact that you were on Moses
if we
Lake.
divert that conversation back to live scope, the same thing applies. Like you just learn over time, like, okay, I might not be chasing around a crappie or I might not be chasing around a bass just based on the way that it acts on live scope.
Right. Yeah,
That's what I've learned.
Different. We wouldn't have known different with live scope on that one.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like with me with wipers, I know for a fact, almost 95% of the time, depending on the bait, like especially a jig wrap or a spoon or something super aggressive, I can get that fish to react to it and like flip around and be like, oh, what's that? And then if he wants it, he's probably going to pursue it. Or if he doesn't, he's going to jet. But if it's a carp or a catfish or a sheephead or whatever, it's not even going to pay any mind to that. He's just going to, and that may not be true all the time. That's why I said 95%. But in my experience with live scope on the water, 316 days a year, just kind of what I've learned in my area, because it may not be different or it may not be the same for everyone in the North Country. But
So have you guys experimented with any other type of live sonar other than Garmin? Have you tried
No.
anything else? No.
have not.
Yeah, because I'm having a little bit of buyer remorse on the
Well, and I
Lowrance.
mean, so here's the thing. Here's the thing with all of the electronic situations you have. Like me, for example, I have lived in Kansas, moving from Wisconsin since 2000. The Garmin headquarters is in Olathe, which is in the Kansas City metro area. I had a friend, a fishing buddy who worked for Garmin back when they first came out with their marine units, which is right about the time that I bought my first boat. And so his discount that he was offering was pretty attractive. Chad, I know you can attest because we've been speaking about discounts. I have a much better deal for you, by the way. So I'm fortunate to say that short of like a random Lowrance HDS unit that I had that came with a tiller boat that I bought, and just like the traditional grayscale or black and white Humminbird on my very first boat, I've ran Garmin probably since their second or third generation marine units. So I am a Garmin branded lifer. Then you have the Humminbird guys. So you see the Humminbird live sonar technology come out. I forget who, if Lowrance or Humminbird did it first after Garmin did, and then have followed. But you have those guys that want to be brand loyal, and they want to believe that they're, you know, what they're following Garmin up with is going to be, if as good, if not better, or whatever. And when you fish a lot and you see the different ones, because I've seen videos, you know, Clayton Schick, as far as Uncut angling fans, like you guys know who Clayton is. He is a Humminbird guy. He has Mega Live or whatever with Humminbird, and then Tom Boley, another big walleye YouTuber, he's the same. So those are the Humminbird guys because if you watch their YouTube channels enough, you've seen that they have always run Humminbird for the most part. So it's really all brand specific, but I mean, when you really look at the details, I see a lot of latency issues with Lowrance active target. When you're jigging a bait, there's a big delay as far as what latency actually means. Humminbird, Garmin came out with an update. I think it was like this past February. Yeah, it was like February that I had done a video on the YouTube channel about it. But with the color limit update, and that allows you to reduce a lot of you can crank your gain up a lot and then bring the color gain up or down and lose a lot of interference, but at the same time you're also losing a lot of detail. And when you look at a side-by-side of Humminbird or Mega Live and Garmin with the color limit cranked up, you can see that the Garmin, a lot of the Garmin guys call it the Humminbird update or the Mega Live update because it looks the same. But when you really look into it and you know how to play with the settings on the units, because like whenever updates come out, I see all the Garmin Facebook pages blowing up with guys saying, "Oh, Garmin put this update out, it ruined my unit. Now nothing works," and this and that and the other. It's not that's not why the updates come out. The updates come out to supplement what's already within the unit. So you have to know how to play with the settings. Like, for example, that color limit update that I was talking about on the Garmin units, I don't use it. I put it at 0. I like the original. And to go to Aaron's point in one of the Uncut angling videos that he did, or just whenever Live Scope kind of got big, and I don't remember what video it was, but Aaron talked about, and this was well over a year or two ago, getting information back from the transducer. It doesn't matter if my screen is cluttered, it looks crappy, it's not, the water column is not perfectly black and this and that. I want information back from the transducer. And that's something that I've really gravitated towards, because when I first got Live Scope and started making videos, it was all about the screen quality and how clean the picture was. And yes, you could still see the fish interacting with your bait and this and that, but the more that I learned about the settings and what they do, now I want as much information as I can get back from the transducer. So all that was to say, as far as brands and stuff go, I'm not going to tell anyone what they should get. If your brand loyal to Humminbird, Lowrance, Garmin, whatever, it's all about just learning the settings and what the settings do, how you can manipulate them. Water clarity plays a big factor into it, because here in the Mid-South, it's like last weekend, for example, we got a lot of rain and it took 2 days for that water to just blow out and it's muddy. And therefore on my settings, I have to now adjust certain settings to account for all the sediment in the water column. So
Right.
I always become very long-winded when it comes to talking about settings and stuff like that. But all that was to say, my personal preference, I like getting as much information back from the transducer as I can without sacrificing this or that. So that all varies from.
I think one of the biggest things, and that's the reason why I said I have a little bit of remorse, is because with the Lowrance, it seems like you've only got just a few settings that you can play with. Where you look at the Garmin or the Humminbird, you've got several different, you can set contrast, you can set color, you can set, whatever. But Lowrance is just contrast. That's it. You've got that and your gain. And so what I find is, there is a sweet spot in there. You just have to find it. And of course, it's different between lake to lake, depending on the clarity and whatnot. But you've got to be able to learn how to adjust the filters, because there are a few filters on there that I notice if you take those off, you're going to get a lot more information back. The more filters you have on, the screen's black, but you're missing a lot of information.
Right. Well, and that plays into, like, for Garmin, for example, the color palettes. Like, with that color limit update that they released back in February or late January, they also released about 4 or 5 or 6 new color palettes. And those color palettes play into the certain settings that they also allow you to adjust. So for example, like for me, with the settings that had come out around that same time, for the live scope guys watching, the color scheme moss was really good for me because it allowed me to get a little bit more, not 3D, but more depth or contrast to the structure or the fish. Like when we're fishing deep standing timber or whatever for crappies, just being able to see different angles of the shadows and so on and so forth. So all that was to say, the color palettes, like you were talking about filters, I can't speak for Lowrance, but it allows you to really kind of fine tune all the settings based on the color palette itself, based on the water clarity, based on the conditions, whatever, depth, all that stuff. So
yeah. Hey, Aaron, if you were gonna tell somebody, hey, that, you know, they're interested in trying to get something as far as a live sonar, how would you kind of coach them into getting something like that?
In terms of what? Whether they should get one or not?
No, let's say somebody that's new to it, you know, because I've always said, look, if you're going to spend the money on something, you know, and this has to do with whether you're buying the screen, the transducer, you know, you get what you pay for. And so if somebody's getting into it and they want to spend the money on it, you know, how would you coach them into getting something?
I still don't understand the question.
The cheapest way to get into a live scope.
how much money do you have and what brand do you prefer? It's more.
Yeah,
of a
well, let's
money
say,
aspect.
well, and that's just it though, because, you know, we all talk about the live sonar being, you know, it's an investment, it's expensive, right? But you're also talking about something that you're going to spend the money on to make it worth your while. If you go and you buy a cheaper screen, but you've got the better sonar, you know, you're only getting a certain amount of resolution out of that screen. It's only going to produce so much, right?
I don't know. I don't feel that way. I don't know
Okay,
how.
tell me why.
Feel, but
So that's kind of a loaded question because not to steal Aaron's point from him, but when you talk about different units, like for example, the EchoMap UHD 93 SV is like the base model that you'd probably want to start with for live scope. Super good price point, especially when it comes down to like a Black Friday situation. You can get it for like nothing at this point. But that being said, that's your base model. The processor speed is so slow. It's like using a laptop with like 4 gigs of RAM. It's just, it can be really laggy. Like you still get the same picture, but then you upgrade to something like an Ultra unit or an a GPS map unit where that processor speed is like having 16 gigs of RAM in your computer. And that screen, especially when it comes to not even just live imaging, but traditional sonar and down imaging, your screen, just that image coming across the screen is so much smoother, where with the 93s, it's just a little bit more choppy to the naked eye. So it does, like, you have to look at the actual specs of the screen resolution or the pixels per square inch to see. But when I have clients in the boat and they have money to spend or whatever, I don't tell them to go out and get a GPS map like 8610, which is like the Mac daddy of screens, 12-inch unit. I mean, amazing, but for their price point, you're better off getting like a 10-inch Ultra unit because it has the same pixels per square inch that match whatever information is coming back, fast processor speed, and you know it's 10 inches, so it's decent. But
yeah, I guess that's
anyway,
kind of what I was getting
sorry,
at. You know,
Aaron.
if you've got
that
somebody
was
that's
perfect. Thank you.
if you've got somebody that's getting into it, you know, and they go and they buy the cheaper unit, right? So then they end up getting frustrated because they can't see what they want to see.
Right.
So,
well, and that's a big thing. And like I said earlier in this conversation, I try to not engage or see too much of what's going on in the Garmin Facebook groups. But I mean, the 93 was perfect for me when I first got into that situation. I had 3 of them in the boat, 2 at the console, and then 1 in the bow. But then I finally, this was even before I was on staff and got discounts or whatever, to where when I finally upgraded to an Ultra unit, I was just blown away at how much smoother the picture was. Even your maps, just like when you're running new water and you don't know what's around, if you're zooming in and out of the map if you have depth shading turned on, if you have your satellite images turned on, that all accounts for how fast or slow the unit is. And so if you had all that stuff turned on like a base model 93 SV EchoMap UHD or whatever, just pinching and zooming or, you know, pressing plus or minus on the map, it's going to take a while to load. And by then you might already be, you know, in some sort of narrow situation with a boulder, and then you're done. So I just like quickness, and that comes from just fishing every day and just how my units are responding based on what I want to happen. So that's all. Very passionate about my electronics.
You know, the crazy thing, I could swear that I saw a video of Tom Wynn's bow, and I swear he's got like a 9-inch EchoMap on there.
That's entirely possible, and that works for people. It works.
Right.
It worked for my dad when I first got him set up with it. It worked for me guiding for 2 years with it before I went bigger and faster and better.
Yeah.
It all just depends on the person. It's not,
Yep.
you know, it's not like a universal thing, one
The-
size fits all situation.
I mean, you could probably get the Panopt if you really wanted to for nothing. And
Literally at this point, literally, like it would be a stretch
Right.
to
but that
get
stuff
$200 for that.
actually, I was blown away the first time I used Panoptics. I went right out here where I live, and the very first drop, like I caught it, I actually recorded it with my cell phone. The very first time I ever dropped, I caught like a 23-incher right below me. And the very first time I ever used live scope, I pointed it at a fish, actually right where Aaron caught that 10-pounder, which, by the way, that spot has not been good since. It's very odd, but for big fish. But I actually, on my first cast with live scope, caught like a 28-incher right there. That's where Bear is buried at, by the way.
On the island.
Oh,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, when you were out here, Bear had already died. I had Rufus at that point.
I know.
Yeah, Bear loved Aaron.
Everybody loves
So-
Aaron. He's so lovable.
He took a chunk out of him.
Aaron for counselor.
So Lonnie, I am so sorry to take away your question from Aaron on that one. If you want to circle back.
Yeah, I mean, either one of you guys could answer it. That was
Definitely.
funny.
That was great. Lonnie, I thought you were like trying to get me to say, yeah, buy Garmin. And I was like, okay, this is kind of an awkward
No.
question.
No,
I'm already wearing
because
a Garmin t-shirt, so I feel like I didn't know what you were asking me, but I will echo, not echo Matt, but I will echo Brian's statements in terms of like how the technology definitely translates down to the entry level units. And that is in the other brands too. I'm not as familiar with Lowrance. I'm very familiar with Humminbird and Garmin, and I have owned Lowrances even not that long ago. So I know about them. I just not as thoroughly, but I know that like the fishing scene, it's made for fishing, and it is not nearly as advanced as like a technology scene. Like if you're out there buying a computer and you go buy a computer that's more expensive and better, it's definitely, more expensive. It's definitely going to be better. But in the fishing scene, it is very bizarre how this works at times, because the operating system and the unit becomes completely different when you go up in models. So it doesn't necessarily always translate to a better unit. And it's shocking. I don't want to necessarily give examples because it would be very telling, and it's in brands that I don't work with. So it's going to look like it would be an attack, but the base level units across the board are very good. And specifically, we're talking about Garmin here because Brian and I both work with Garmin, but EchoMap is amazing. And I only use GPS Map, which is the more expensive series. And the main reason that I use it is because it has more options for me for recording. Like it's got all these output options. So I have to use that because I got to record. And it also has all sorts of other capabilities. But the reality is that 99% of users don't tap into all of the settings on the base model units. So they don't even need to consider going above and beyond that, which is good news if someone's shopping and they're thinking like, oh, do I need to splurge and get the more expensive model? And the answer is no, you don't. Like the base level model can do everything that you need. Even if you're a tournament fisherman, most of the tournament guys are using 10 and 12 inch EchoMap what's it, EchoMap Plus? What's
Yep.
the last word? Is that
Or
what it
the
is?
Ultra.
Ultra. Yeah, the Ultra. EchoMac Ultra. Plus is what it was before it turned into Ultra. And is that not correct? Aren't all the tournament Garmin guys using Ultras? Like very few of them are using GPS maps.
100%. And just like Scott Martin, for example, because he has a, you know, as far as tournament fishermen go, a pretty big channel. He has matching 12s at his console, which are Ultra units, like pretty base level. Like, yes, they are still very spendy units.
But half the price of a GPS map.
Right, exactly. Like that guy has no GPS maps on his boat. A lot of the tournament anglers all have Ultra units. But like for me and you, for example, I didn't start using a GPS map until last year when I had the opportunity to, because I was able to. Like as far as, you know, if I didn't have the YouTube channel and stuff, I'd probably still be rigging up a third GoPro on my Ultra units to record the screen. Whereas now with the GPS map units, I can record that from the unit to Active Captain in my phone and make it. I mean, it's not as easy to sync the audio as it was with all the GoPros, but
Yeah.
still huge benefit. But yeah, the Ultras are by far, as far as base map models go, just the standard.
And that's not to say that there's not all sorts of amazing features in the GPS map series, but I'm just saying that
Right.
like if it's twice the price, it isn't twice the functionality. It just has to be twice the price for all these other reasons with the cost of technology and stuff. But if you are, you know, getting into the market like Lonnie's asking about, you aren't cutting corners or missing out by just getting the quote unquote base model, because all the time I see people who just get their first live scope and I'm helping them set it up or something. And it always surprises me just how amazing it is still, even though I'm using a unit that costs way more than theirs, but it's like right out of the box, all on default settings. It's just awesome and ready to go. So it should be pretty encouraging for someone that's trying to get into the technology and figure it out. And people hear about, you know, people like Brian talking about all the different settings that might fine tune it. But if you don't get that deep into it and you just use that base settings, you're going to be totally fine and get all sorts of functionality at it right there if you never go beyond that. And that's
really
across all the brands. But in terms of like the default settings really do work on all brands with all
out of the box.
Yeah.
Literally take it out of the box, install it, and go fishing, and you're fine.
Yeah.
And that's I do a lot of electronic sessions with customers, and I could tell them the same thing. Like, well, you're not paying me for 2 hours every time to show you these settings, but if you are not comfortable with these settings or can't remember anything, put it on auto or default, and you will still have a great experience with the unit.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I've talked to people that want to get, you know, the live sonar, but they're a little bit intimidated by it because
Right.
they're thinking there's just so much that they have to be able to learn to be able to use it.
Yeah,
No, there's
that's my
plenty.
dad.
You can watch both these guys' channels. I mean, that learn how to use that stuff. I mean, and right now is the time. Everybody's selling the original live scope. It's most of the guys are selling them. So right now you could probably pick up a 93 SV, which is a 9-inch, and you could probably pick up a live scope, which is the black box, and the LVS 32. Man, you could probably pick them up right now for $700-800 for that version of live scope. You know,
Nobody on Facebook is that optimistic. They're all selling it for way more. Trust me.
what are they getting for like a basic live scope, like with a 9-inch?
Probably like $1,000, honestly.
$1,000, right? So
because they can, but realistically, you are in the realm of where it should be. But
right.
That's the way she goes, boys.
$1,000. I mean, but that's good for resale. I mean, that's a good thing, right? I mean, usually our electronics, by the time something else comes out, it's worthless.
No,
So,
and the LVS 32 was and still is an amazing transducer. Like that's what I have rigged on the back of my boat now. I have a 34 in the front and a 32 in the back. Just for we have 4 clients in the boat. They're not all hovered in the front, but yeah, all you can get is a 32. I did so well with that. But now I like having the 34, the upgraded one, because I can see my bait out way farther and see those fish interact way better, even on just default settings.
And deeper.
That's what
deeper,
big
Chad.
time.
You can go beyond about 31 feet and have better results for sure with the 32.
And they even have a new, you know, there's I forget what the number is, but they have the new XR transducer.
Does it give a little bit better target separation than the 32 on the bottom?
Absolutely. I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does.
Well, that's good. That's
Because if it didn't, I would still have the 32, because there's a lot of guys that are still, they had the 34, they sold it because they prefer the 32, and that it's all personal preference.
right.
There's not one size fits all for stuff like that.
Well, didn't you put a 34 on yours, Chad?
No, not yet. I'm gonna.
He's going to.
I actually. The ironic part is Aaron got me a discount like 6 years ago on my original Garmin's. Now Brian's hooking me up with a discount. So
Happy to help.
I know both of these guys. Well, I don't know Aaron very much. I've repaid my debts with Aaron. Hey, right now would be a good time to do a public apology, by the way, for those guys that were fishing the shoreline back where were we? Winnipeg? Remember those guys that were fishing the shoreline, having a real day, just kind of relaxing, casting?
We don't owe anybody a public apology.
You don't think so?
No.
You don't think you owe somebody a public apology? Come on. What if they're watching and they knew exactly who that was?
Nobody's watching. Nobody watches this podcast, and we're 70 minutes in, so definitely nobody's watching. To bring it back on topic, we can talk about that story at some point, but to bring it back on topic, the only thing I was going to say is, in terms of people looking to get into live scope, for Lonnie's question, you better make sure that you're completely comfortable with everything you have in your boat. Ooh, look at the puppy. What's the dog's name? Tucker? I thought it would have some super cliche fishing name.
No.
Drop Shot. Its name's Drop Shot.
Ned Rig.
I don't pick Rufus up, but this is my dumbass.
What I was going to say is, if you're not completely comfortable with your technology that you have, don't even think about live scope, because it's not like just adding exciting, it's not like ordering dessert after you have a good meal. It's like you've got to be bored and know exactly what you're doing with 2D and side imaging and boat operation and super comfortable with everything, because so many people, when they're trying to get into it, they're thinking, oh, and if I add live scope, I'll be so much better equipped. But if you don't already know how to use all your tools and then you add another tool, you're not getting anything out of it. So there's just no point in even investing into it. You need to figure out how to use the stuff you have first.
100%. Big. I mean, that is one thing I stress to people. It's like, if you literally cannot read sonar or don't know what you're looking at, why would you have live scope? And it's like down imaging came out, and then side imaging came out, and that's a whole nother conversation too, side imaging, and trying to tell clients, there's literally a school of 90 wipers 80 feet off the right side of the boat on side imaging. How can you not see those? And my guys yesterday that I had for 2 days, they were still I just really don't see it. But they also don't have boats and don't fish, so it's tough to explain and say side imaging is like a flashlight. You can see the shadows behind them and this, that, and the other. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I know a few guys that have bought it and sold it right away. I mean, it's not for everybody. Definitely. Nope.
That's fine. And that, there are days where I don't ever put live scope down. It's if the fish are there and they're dumb and they're hungry, especially we're in the bite we're going to get into here in the fall with swim baits and stuff, you just set up, it upwind from the fish, and if they're back behind you, you know where they are, and don't need live scope. You're not interacting with them. You're just bringing it by a big school of fish and they bite.
Well, that's a good point too, because it's not a be all end all, as far as that's going to improve everything you do.
Nope. And I've always said that too.
I mean,
but
it's a tool.
But no, it's a tool. And if it's not for catching a bunch of fish, it's learning how those fish behave around your bait, or just in general, like Aaron said. So
here's one thing that a lot of people probably can't, and I could be totally wrong here, but it's kind of like for guys that ice fish. So people that have never ice fished never got to use a flasher. And that's one guys that use it's like a step up from a flasher, but guys that ice fish know that a flasher can show the mood of a fish. And you can probably get good enough to tell the species, depending on how they're moving. But it's that's what I've always compared it to. It's we were always at that, and they were always upgrading different flashers, and, there was all kinds of craze in that. And then all of a sudden this came out, and it just kind of expanded the fact that you could stand right over a fish and catch it. Now you can stand behind a fish and catch it and see what it's doing versus having to be right over the damn thing to see how it was reacting, you know? So, and a lot of guys have never seen a flasher, man. That's the thing I miss most about ice fishing is it's right under you, you know?
Garmin
Now-
does have a flasher mode. If you ever start feeling nostalgic in the boat, you can
No,
switch
that's
to the
okay.
flasher.
Well, you
No.
keep saying about your history as far as ice fishing. I mean, you can ice fish out here. We got it out here.
Yeah, I haven't done it. I just have, when you can take a boat out, there's just, I can't do it, man.
I hate ice fishing. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I was a kid when I ice fished, but now I just like to move too much.
Yeah.
Like or have something in my hand. But I know Aaron likes to move a lot too, and he does it on the ice. I just can't do it.
Well, we also don't have a choice here.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's what I always tell people is that now here in Kansas, I can be in the boat 354 days a year, you know.
Are you going to make
Even if I have a choice, I still go out and ice fish.
It's fun
Aaron.
every now and then. But I still have a hand auger though. Like I'm not on the lithium program for when I want to punch holes in the local stock trout pond when I get desperate enough to try and get content out.
How far is it to Jay's Island out there from your place?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, Sonora's 2 hours away, and then it's like probably 20 minutes down the lake.
So it's a 20-minute sled ride out there. You haven't been out there?
I haven't been there, no.
That thing looks awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to live there. Just leave me there. What's the deal with? You can't actually buy the land. You have to get like a permit through the. What's the process?
Chad, what's with you on asking all these questions that nobody would care about?
He's just assuming everyone watches Jay's channel. So.
Because I want to.
You can watch Jay's channel and not actually be trying to get a permit to build a cabin beside Jay's cabin. You're just interested vicariously, but you're not actually trying to buy the next.
Well, I can't do it on the Canada side, but I'm just talking. What's the process? Isn't there something you have to get a permit to build on these islands out there? You don't know? I thought you were into politics and you knew the process. You better study up on this stuff.
It's tough to go from live scope to this subject, I'm sure.
It's very tough.
Well, hey, he won't answer the questions that I want him to answer, so I got to dig really deep.
Hey, here's the answer that everybody needs to hear. The COVID restrictions on the Canada-US border are lifted in, I don't know how many days are in September, but it's about 4 or 5 days. So come on up. Canada is open season, I guess vice versa.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's good to go.
I was under the impression that Aaron wanted to talk about anything but fishing. So
I'd be up for talking about anything but fishing, but he's asking me about building permits and island codes. I don't live in Ontario, so whatever the process is over there wouldn't even be the same for here. I don't know what.
Oh yeah, it's not.
You guys should get
Sonora
Jay
is
on the
not
show.
Manitoba.
Ask him these specific questions.
Oh, he's
we're
coming.
trying.
Okay, he's coming. Is he coming right now? Is it a surprise guest?
No,
Call him. Get him on here.
no. We were going to talk to him and Clayton. They actually showed some interest in actually coming out here, unlike you, who doesn't want to drive anywhere.
What's your question? I'll ask Jay. What is the process for getting a permit on an island on Lake of the Woods?
I got other
It's
questions.
You got what?
we
I
went
have
off the rails.
Hey, Brian's not going to come back if this conversation. Oh,
But all-
he came back.
but
I
all
just needed something extra to get us through.
I thought you were going to answer any question. You've already
Brian.
tried answering 2 of my questions.
Brian, is your cat there? Do you still have your cat handy?
I had to let the dogs inside, so the cats are MIA.
Your cat just came over to my house. Here's your cat.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
isn't this your
my
cat?
goodness.
Oh,
See?
look at that.
Your cat
That's
just
a-
came over.
Well, she's also about 20 pounds lighter than mine, or two of them. See, I'm a weird cat guy. Can you guys see it? Well, that's a really bad
No, you're
angle.
just a
I
weird
literally
guy.
have my cats tattooed on my arm.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, you know the expression, you only live once, so you might as well make it as weird as you can, right?
That's right, exactly.
I'm not going to ask
But-
anymore.
Do you want to say hi? Perfect.
I thought that I had some good questions going, but I guess.
Chad, where are you
No.
going? What can we talk about? Hey, Aaron,
What?
so live scope mounted on trolling motor or independent pole?
Oh my goodness. Did you hear what he just said, Chad? That's an example of a good question.
Happy to help.
to have it everywhere.
Yeah, have it everywhere. I have 4 mounted on my boat. And here's the problem with the answer to that question and why it's always funny when people have such strong opinions on the internet, because typically their answer is the only thing they're familiar with, right? Like Brian was admitting that like he's super fluent with Garmin. So he's knowledgeable on Garmin and he's confident in his Garmin. But so often when people are either brand heavy or just preferences in general with fishing, it's because that's literally the only thing they know. And we don't have time to be fluent in everything we don't know. So it is refreshing when people express their opinions, being transparent about that and not being like so commanding as in like, I know everything. It's like, no, you only know what you know. So you're happy with what you know, but that doesn't mean that it's better than everything else. So anyways, in terms of like live scope positions in the boat, I feel like I'm quite fluent in different live scope positions because I think that I've used more than most people have used. And my answer to the question is that like they are all good and it really is specific to what you're doing. So that's why when I see people arguing about it, it's like, okay, but your needs are different than your needs. So you know, it doesn't really apply. And if I were to say what just like the one best one was, again, it's like everybody's needs are so different. So you asked me bow mount versus pole, but I'd say the 4 different locations would be like pole settings, and poles can be in different mounts in different places on the boat. So that one's like quite diverse. Obviously, bow mount is pretty clear cut, except now, yeah, we'll just say it's clear cut. And then there's transom mount, right? Which is mostly for tiller guys, but a wheel guy could have a transom mount also. And then the last one would be on a transom mount trolling motor, which is, you know, not specific just to tillers, because there are guys, walleye guys that'll have a Vantage still, right? Oh, right there's one. Do you have a live scope on? Have you had a live scope on your Vantage before, or do you right now?
Yeah, it's on there. I don't know.
Oh, there you go. So let's, Chad, how many live scopes do you have on your boat?
Just one.
That's the only one?
Well, yeah. The last time I was fishing, this is what I was using.
And are you using the Vantage as just a transducer holder, or are you using it as a trolling motor also?
No, just a transducer holder.
Whoa!
Amazing. Nice.
It does work incredibly if you're back trolling with the Vantage, because it's the exact same thing, Brian, when you're pursuing something with the bow mount. If you're more comfortable or you're using the bow control from the back of the boat, it's the exact same thing. And then it can't be beat in that very small scenario. But I mean, that's such a niche thing that's clearly the least popular option, because there's so few people that have a Vantage and are so primarily focused on back trolling. So that's the least popular by far. I think that if I was to only have one, I would definitely have it on the transom, because when I have it on the transom, I am always using it. And when I say always, I guess if I'm at full speed, I'm not using it. But the rest of the time, I am always using it. The same way that when side imaging came out, I'm always looking at side imaging, right? Like when you first got side imaging, you're always looking at it. It's not just when you're mentally like, oh, now I'm going to start side imaging. No, you always want to know as much information as you can know. As soon as you pull out from the dock, even if you're not planning to fish to the other side of the lake, you can't help but stare at the side imaging or the live scope. Like it's switched over to live scope. Like now I still have side imaging always going. Like if I have two screens, one screen does side imaging on half, and then on the bottom we got mapping in 2D, and then the other screen is all live scope, because live scope's the most important by far, the most interesting, the most information to be gleaned. So that's why I would go with the transom mount, because it is always in the water. Your bow mount, your trolling motor is not even in the water, and if you have a pole mount, again, your transducer is not even in the water. So it'd be pretty a tough argument that that would be the most important when it doesn't even go in the water until you put it in the water, right? But for application catching fish, it's pretty awesome, obviously, to have it on the bow mount, because you can steer it and search all while you're fishing hands free. I guess for me, being a tiller guy, I'm not eager to put my bow mount in the water. Like there's lots of days I don't put my bow mount in the water. So again, I love using it on the bow mount because it's hands free and whatever. I just don't end up using it there as much. But I think those would be the two most important: is transom and bow, and then pole is third. And it's when pole works, it's so freaking deadly and so important. But the situations are so much more niche because you need to know the spot already. In my opinion, when you're using the pole, you're dissecting a very specific situation. Whereas with the transom and the bow, you can be blind fishing a brand new lake and you're immediately getting information from those things with your live scope. But on the pole, it's more like, you know, when you're spot locked on a spot and you're dissecting it and analyzing every cast and stuff, it's I don't know. I just feel like it's a lot more niche when it's on the pole.
See, I've got
It
mine
is for
on a
sure.
pole.
And that leads me back to your video, Aaron, with Peter in that walleye tournament, where like you already knew the spot, didn't have probably live scope running on the transom, but you pull up to the spot and then put that jerry rig pole situation on the rail on the gunnel and just sharpshoot those fish like on the spot. They're 50 feet away. Someone's got a drop shot with a leech, and then Peter's got a jig wrap, and you're, you know, casting directly to the spot versus having it on the transom. You're looking as you're idling, you know, and then fishing it from there. So that's why, like, we have both you and I have, you know, 2 or 3 live scopes on the boat or whatever for just different applications. And like you said, very, very specific and very niche. So,
So if
see,
I was
that's what I was going to say was the fact that I've got mine on a pole, but mine is, I'm able to move it from front to back to side. So it's mounted on the track system for the Lund. And so I can move it to the front if I'm searching. I can move it to the back if I'm spot locked and I want to cast behind me, or even if I'm just, I can leave that pole in the water and still be able to see any direction I wanted to see.
Yeah.
So that works for me.
it's all, and just like we need to let the viewers know that having more than 1 to 3 live scopes in the boat is not realistic for the average fisherman. So don't think that because we're talking about it, you need to have one in the front and one in the back. You have to get comfortable with what you feel like you're comfortable with, if not just spending or taking out a second mortgage to fund your electronics on the boat.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that was my reason to do that.
Even on the YouTube channel, if I mention dual live scopes or what have you, that people are like, oh my God, is this what it's really like in this world? Is it realistic to even try?
And Brian's like, no, it's nothing like that. We can't tell you what it's actually like because you wouldn't be able to handle it. This is all we can tell you. There's more. There's a lot more.
That's right. That's right. We have to give them as much as they can handle. And we bring it back to you, Chad.
No, just like you said, I mean, every situation is different. I find myself out here, I use the pole quite a bit, cast in current, because usually you set up your boat and it's going to be unpredictable. And then I can flip it to either side. And if I want to scan a shoreline, but every place I go is different. Like that's my pre-fish is figuring out how I'm going to use that thing. Sometimes I don't use it at all, right? You know,
Do you ever try and track your crankbaits on live scope behind the boat?
as I ever did was drop like a 6-ounce 3-way down, and I was out on Potholes Reservoir, which I'm actually going this weekend. I'm actually going to live scope big bluegills on some cribs, which I've done every year out there. And they're big out there, man. Lonnie lives right by Potholes. I mean, there's legitimate 12-inch bluegills out there, isn't there?
So
Oh,
you,
yeah, or
you use
bigger.
you use perspective mode for bluegills on beds then?
No, well, these are going to be in deep water cribs.
Cribs.
Oh, okay, sure.
Um,
cribs. Okay, not
yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
No, so I'll be, yeah, but man, that perspective mode is one thing that that's a great, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, I've used that. I don't fish super shallow very often. Like
It doesn't suit my needs either. I never use it because it doesn't
But
suit my fishing.
it's amazing. You've at least used it, right? And seen it is
Right.
crazy. It's
Oh,
just
it's on the boat, but
get my bearings down and what I was actually looking at directional wise on perspective mode. But when you're really shallow, it was legit. I just have never used
it was really fun on Green Bay because I go up there every late March, early April and try and get a big one like that one right there. That's a replica. Which way? We're going the wrong way. That guy
What
right there.
species? You're pointing at a pike.
No, that was my first mounted fish. Why is this so hard? There we go.
I
That
told
guy
you
right
earlier.
there. Yeah, big walleye, 30
Also,
incher.
that's what she said.
That's right. And yeah, more width than or more length than girth. No, other way around. Who cares? It was a big walleye. But anyway, perspective mode was super cool seeing those pods of fish on the big sand flats just shift around. I wasn't trying to like cast out and see my rip and wrap as I was bringing it back in, but being able to follow those in that shallow water, that was the only time besides smallmouth fishing on Sturgeon Bay that I had really used it. And I haven't done any videos on it either, which is unfortunate. But like I said, in the Mid-South for how I fish deeper than 15 feet, it doesn't really suit. It wouldn't really suit me very well.
go any deeper in perspective then.
I mean, you can, but I mean, that's kind of the general rule of thumb with perspective mode on live scope is that for your best viewing perspective or images that you're going to get, it's not as conducive in depths more than 15 feet.
You never use it, Aaron?
No.
No.
No, and not because it doesn't work. I just, it's back to like, if you don't understand what you have already, you shouldn't get too much further in. Well, I'm just admitting I haven't even used it just because I guess I don't know. I haven't been fishing as much in the last couple of years, and there's so much out of live scope that I haven't felt the need to learn more. And I'm waiting on either Brian or Jay or Tom Boley or somebody to show a crazy video with perspective mode. And then I'll be like, okay, I have no choice. I have to start using it more.
I will work towards that goal.
Hey, I want to mention, because Lonnie was talking earlier about entry level and people getting into this, and I feel like I just sort of put the pole mount thing in a distant third place in terms of priority. But if you're just getting into it, or perhaps you're getting a live scope more on the ice fishing side of things, which more so represents me than the three of you guys, then the pole mount is incredible because it gives the person the opportunity to be investing in that live scope and using it for year-round usage, because then they could jump in someone else's boat or something if they had a portable mount. I'm thinking Fishing Specialties has the best pole mounts now, because the one that Brian's mentioning now using that video was a prototype from Troy at Garmin. But Fishing Specialties has amazing ones that are permanent mounts. And then I know that they and other brands have portable mounts that you can clamp onto the side of the boat. And instantly what that does is it turns your like 4-month usage and justification of buying live scope for ice fishing into a year-round thing when you hop into a buddy's boat, and now you can just plop it on, which actually represents a way larger percentage of fishermen than the four of us represent, because we all have boats and, copious amounts of technology and toys. But there's way more fishermen that are at the other end of the spectrum and have a small boat, or are jumping in a friend's small boat, or renting a boat, or, don't even have a boat. Like, that is why ice fishing has taken off like crazy, is because you don't need that crazy buy-in to get into it. And those people are justifying buying live scope just for the ice fishing season. Well, they can get usage of it all year long with a pole mount and jumping in someone else's boat, or, I'm repeating myself, but the pole mount has probably more usage and benefits to more user groups, even though I said for me personally, it's third, but it might be first for people overall.
Yep.
Sure. Well, and like I said, that's the reason why I put it on a pole, because I can move it front to back, side to side. And, I've got the ability to use it anywhere in the boat.
Yeah.
I felt, because I was originally going to put it on the trolling motor, but I thought, well, a lot of times I'm spot locking and fishing behind me. That doesn't do me any good. So that just made the most sense for me.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think the reason that it goes on the bow mount so often, what you see is because those are bass fishermen, and bass fishermen are covering water and fishing the bank. So then it has a lot more use in that sense. But a walleye fisherman is typically fishing a defined structure, whether it's, an extended point or a submerged reef or something. So then once you pull up, it's way better to be able to explore it like you're describing, Lonnie. You're not just like fishing an endless weed line or shoreline like KVD is.
Right.
This is the other one, Aaron. She doesn't like the ring line. Anyway, all that was to say.
I got a gray cat too.
Oh, well, now she just wants her belly pet. It's a meeting of the cats. Uncut angling and Kansas angling experience cats just kicking it.
Hey, Chad, no pussy over in Washington?
Good low hanging fruit.
Classic.
Can you do the ketchup cheese trick?
No, he doesn't work
that one.
I can try it, but I don't think he'd probably fail under pressure.
That's
What?
okay. That would make a good thumbnail though. You could have Garmin written in ketchup on a piece of bread with Rufus just right there, kind of like the uncut angling one.
Yeah, he's not a fan of ketchup. He actually didn't want anything to do with that ketchup. He likes the meat.
That was funny.
All right, guys. Well, I think we're going
What
to cut
else?
it.
Oh, is this halftime? Is this the halftime
Yeah.
break?
It's the halftime show. Yeah. I think this is the longest podcast we've had. So
I know. Well, and that's the one thing too. Like, it seems like I've done 2 or 3 podcasts with Jason Mitchell Outdoors. And every time we talk, it ends up being way longer than what they ever thought that it could be. Because when we talk about stuff like this, that's just where the conversations end up going. Because there's so many different facets to that one subject that especially with 4 guys on the podcast, it could be 3.5 hours.
oh, heck yeah. But I appreciate you guys coming on, though.
Feels like it's been 20 minutes.
There's never been any, like Aaron was trying to get out of me, there's been any game plans with this stuff, man. We just reach out to some people that we know that want to bullshit one night. And, now that our fishing seasons are over as far as tournament goes, we got to talk to some real people, So, hey, I appreciate you guys coming on. I know Aaron's super busy. Always.
He says he is. He definitely says he is. Yeah.
And Brian, I know you got to work tomorrow and go back to fishing. I'm jealous. While I go on a greasy compressor, brazing it and possibly getting all kinds of chemicals into my system I don't need. So I'm jealous of you. Aaron, I'm not too jealous of you, but definitely Brian.
Okay, so guys, we do this every week now, Tuesday nights. We're just all be here every Tuesday night. Okay.
Works for me.
Go.
Perfect.
I like it.
Every time we have a guest, just because we know that you're always so easy to get a hold of and very promptly get back to people and such, that you'll probably be here on a weekly basis.
No problem.
Yeah, you're going to get an email every week.
Yeah.
Hey, nice meeting you, Brian and Lonnie.
Nice to meet you too, man.
Yeah.
Long time coming, I reckon.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Peace out, boys.
Yep.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you.